I wasn't invited to my own sister's promotion ceremony. The voicemail from Emma was brutal in its simplicity. Dad says you shouldn't come. He doesn't want your wasted life overshadowing my success. Wasted life. That's what he called my 18-year Air Force career that had taken me from basic airman to commanding officer of one of the most strategic bases in the Pacific. But I didn't come to celebrate Emma's new rank as lieutenant colonel. I came to see if there was anything left of the family that once believed in me. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed. Because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. So I showed up anyway, until Emma's commanding general looked across the room and asked the question that would shatter everything my father thought he knew about his failure of a daughter. I hadn't heard from my father in 3 years. Not since the Christmas dinner where he'd stood up in front of the entire extended family and announced that I was a disappointment who'd thrown away every opportunity he'd given me. The last words he'd spoken directly to me were burned into my memory. You could have been anything, Rachel. Instead, you chose to play soldier and waste your potential. Play soldier. After 18 years of service, multiple deployments, and commanding responsibilities that kept thousands of airmen safe, he still saw my career as an elaborate game of dress-up. My father, Dr. Jonathan Mitchell, was a renowned neurosurgeon who'd built his identity around precision, excellence, and legacy. In his world, success was measured in medical journals published, lives saved in operating rooms, and the respect of colleagues who understood the weight of holding someone's brain in your hands. My sister Emma had followed his vision perfectly. Air Force medical officer, specializing in trauma surgery, everything a military daughter should be in his eyes. Then there was me. The daughter who'd enlisted straight out of high school instead of accepting his offer to pay for medical school. The one who'd chosen what he called grunt work over the prestige of healing. He'd expected me to wash out of basic training, to come crawling back, admitting he was right. Instead, I'd thrived in ways he refused to acknowledge. Emma's voicemail had come at 0600 hours, crisp and professional even when delivering a personal blow. Rachel, it's Emma. Dad's made it clear he doesn't want you at my promotion ceremony. He says your presence would be a distraction from what should be a celebration of real achievement. I'm sorry, but you know how he gets about family image. Family image. The Mitchell family had always been about appearances. Dad's medical practice, Mom's charity work, Emma's perfect progression through the ranks as a medical officer. They attended military functions where Emma's achievements were celebrated, posed for photos that appeared in medical journals and Air Force publications. I was the missing piece they'd edited out of their perfect picture. The promotion ceremony was being held at Joint Base Andrews, where Emma was being elevated to lieutenant colonel and taking over as chief of surgical services. It was a significant achievement, and despite everything, I was proud of her. She'd worked hard to balance military service with medical excellence, earning respect in both worlds. But Dad's message was clear. My kind of military service wasn't worthy of sharing the same stage as hers. To him, Emma was saving lives while I was just managing logistics and personnel, work anyone could do, not requiring the intellect and skill he valued. What he didn't know, what none of them knew, was where those logistics and personnel responsibilities had taken me. For the past 2 years, I'd been commanding Hickam Air Force Base in Hawaii, overseeing operations that supported the entire Pacific Theater. My decisions affected everything from humanitarian missions to strategic defense operations. But Dad had never asked about my assignments, never shown interest in understanding what my grunt work actually entailed. The ceremony would be attended by high-ranking military officials, medical professionals, and family friends who'd watched both Emma and me grow up. Everyone except the daughter whose 18-year career Dad had dismissed as a waste of potential. I stared at my dress blues hanging in the closet, each ribbon and decoration representing years of service, sacrifice, and achievement that my father had never bothered to understand. The Pacific Theater's Service Medal, the Meritorious Service Medal with oak leaf clusters, the Air Force Commendation Medal with 3 oak leaf clusters. Decorations that told the story of a career built on dedication and excellence. But tonight wasn't about vindication or proving him wrong. Tonight was about saying goodbye to the hope that someday he might see me as more than his greatest disappointment. Emma deserved to have her moment celebrated, even if I could only witness it from the shadows. I was going anyway. Not as the failure he'd written off, but as the woman I'd become without his approval. The flight from Honolulu to Washington took 14 hours, giving me plenty of time to plan my approach. I couldn't simply walk into Joint Base Andrews as Colonel Rachel Mitchell. Too many people would recognize the name, ask questions about why the base commander from Hickam was attending a lieutenant colonel's promotion ceremony. The military community was smaller than most people realized, especially at senior levels. Instead, I would become someone forgettable. Someone with legitimate reason to be there but unremarkable enough to blend into the background. My years commanding Hickam had taught me the value of strategic invisibility. Sometimes the most effective leaders were the ones who could observe without being observed. I spent the layover in Los Angeles transforming my appearance. A wig salon provided shoulder-length brown hair to replace my regulation short blonde cut. Civilian clothes from the airport shops. A conservative navy blazer, gray slacks, and low heels that looked professional but not military. Glasses with clear lenses to change the shape of my face. Subtle makeup that aged me slightly and softened my features. The hardest part was adjusting my bearing. 18 years of military service had trained me to walk with purpose, to command attention through posture and presence. For this mission, I needed to become invisible, the kind of professional woman who attended military functions without drawing notice. My cover story was simple but bulletproof. I was Dr. Sarah Chen, a trauma psychology consultant contracted to evaluate medical unit readiness at various bases. The credentials were real, a favor from a colleague who owed me from a joint operation we'd coordinated 2 years earlier. The paperwork would pass any reasonable scrutiny, and my presence at a medical officer's promotion would seem perfectly natural. The persona required a complete mindset shift. Dr. Chen would be quietly observant, taking notes on unit morale and leadership dynamics. She'd ask thoughtful questions about stress management and deployment preparedness. She'd be interested but not intrusive, professional but not memorable. I practiced the voice during the final flight leg, slightly higher pitch, softer tone, less command authority. Dr. Chen spoke like someone who influenced through expertise rather than rank, who built consensus rather than issuing orders. She was everything Colonel Mitchell wasn't supposed to be. Joint Base Andrews looked exactly as I remembered from my last official visit 3 years ago, when I'd been a lieutenant colonel myself, attending a logistics conference. The base was impressive in its scope and efficiency, home to Air Force One and countless critical operations. Today it would host Emma's ceremony in the base theater, a venue that seated 300 and would be packed with military brass and medical professionals. Security was thorough but routine. My credentials passed inspection, and Dr. Chen was waved through without a second glance. I collected my visitor's badge and program, noting that Emma's promotion was one of 12 being conducted simultaneously. A group ceremony meant more attendees, more chaos, better camouflage for my presence. The base theater was already filling when I arrived. I chose a seat in the middle section, close enough to see clearly, but far enough back to avoid drawing attention. Military families clustered in the front rows, while colleagues and professional associates spread throughout the remaining seats. Then I saw them. Dad sat in the second row, distinguished in his dark suit, silver hair perfectly styled, every inch the successful physician. Mom was beside him in an elegant blue dress, her proud smile visible even from my distance. They looked exactly as I remembered, confident, accomplished, completely unaware that their disappointment daughter was sitting 30 feet behind them. Emma appeared near the front, radiant in her dress blues, surrounded by medical colleagues and fellow officers. She looked happy, accomplished, ready for the increased responsibilities that came with her new rank. Despite everything, I felt genuine pride watching her prepare for this moment. Accomplish. I was here as an observer, nothing more. Dr. Chen would witness the ceremony, take her notes, and disappear back into anonymity. Colonel Mitchell would remain hidden, protecting both Emma's moment and the family's carefully constructed image. The ceremony proceeded with military precision. Names were called, officers stepped forward, oaths were administered, and new rank insignia were pinned with ceremonial gravity. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. I watched through Dr. Chen's analytical lens, taking notes on leadership dynamics and unit cohesion, maintaining my cover even in my own mind. When Emma's name was called, I felt my chest tighten despite my professional detachment. She stepped forward with confidence, her posture perfect, her smile genuine. Dad's pride was visible even from my distant seat. The way he straightened in his chair, the slight nod of approval as her new lieutenant colonel insignia was pinned in place. This was the daughter he understood, the one who'd followed a path he could respect, combining military service with medical excellence in ways that made sense in his world. Emma represented everything he'd wanted from both his daughters: prestige, purpose, and recognition in fields he valued. After the formal ceremony concluded, attendees moved to the reception hall for the traditional celebration. I lingered in my seat, watching families gather around their newly promoted officers, cameras flashing, congratulations flowing. Emma was surrounded by well-wishers, Dad and Mom flanking her like proud bookends. I was preparing to leave when someone slid into the seat beside me. "Dr. Chen, isn't it?" The voice belonged to a woman in Air Force dress blues with 2 stars on her shoulders, a major general. She was perhaps 50, with silver-streaked hair and intelligent eyes that seemed to catalog everything they saw. "Yes, General," I replied, staying in character. "Dr. Sarah Chen. I'm here conducting readiness assessments for medical units." General Patricia Williams. She introduced herself, extending her hand. "I'm Emma Mitchell's commanding officer. Impressive young woman, brilliant surgeon, natural leader, everything you want in a senior medical officer." I nodded appropriately. "Her reputation precedes her. I understand she's taking over surgical services?" "She is, and doing it with more maturity and strategic thinking than officers twice her age." General Williams paused, studying my face with an intensity that made me uncomfortable. "You know, Dr. Chen, you remind me of someone. Someone I've been hearing quite a lot about in Pacific Command circles." My pulse spiked, but I kept my expression neutral. "Oh?" "Colonel Rachel Mitchell. Emma's sister, though they don't talk much about family connections in professional settings. Remarkable officer, youngest base commander in the Pacific Theater, running HICM with exceptional efficiency and innovation." The blood drained from my face. General Williams knew exactly who I was. But how? My cover had been perfect, my credentials legitimate, my appearance completely altered. "I'm afraid I don't know anyone by that name," I said carefully. General Williams smiled, but it wasn't entirely friendly. "Really?" "Because Colonel Mitchell has a very distinctive leadership style. She's known for strategic thinking, attention to detail, and the ability to blend into situations where she needs to gather intelligence. Exactly the kind of skills someone would need to attend a family function incognito." She leaned closer, lowering her voice to just above a whisper. "The question is, why would the commanding officer of HICM Air Force Base need to sneak into her own sister's promotion ceremony?" I felt trapped, exposed, despite my careful planning. "General Williams, I think there's been some confusion." "No confusion," she interrupted gently. "I've worked with enough senior officers to recognize command presence, even when someone's trying to hide it. Plus, Emma mentioned her sister's name during our pre-ceremony interview. When I saw you taking notes with the same methodical precision that Colonel Mitchell is famous for, it wasn't hard to connect the dots." The reception continued around us, families celebrating, officers networking, Emma still surrounded by admirers. Dad was telling someone about his daughter's medical achievements, his voice carrying the pride he'd never shown for my accomplishments. "Why are you here, Rachel?" General Williams asked, using my real name for the first time. "Why not just attend as yourself?" "Because I wasn't invited," I admitted quietly. "My father. He doesn't consider my career worth celebrating alongside Emma's achievements." General Williams's expression shifted from curiosity to something approaching anger. Your father doesn't know what you do, does he? He has no idea that his disappointment daughter commands one of the most strategically important bases in the Pacific. He's never asked, I said. To him, I'm just playing soldier while Emma saves lives. Playing soldier? Williams's voice rose slightly. Then she caught herself and lowered it again. Rachel, you coordinate humanitarian missions that save thousands of lives. You oversee operations that maintain stability across the entire Pacific region. You command 12,000 personnel and manage a budget larger than most small countries' defense spending. She shook her head in disbelief. Your family has no idea who you really are, do they? Before I could respond to General Williams, Emma appeared at our table, her new lieutenant colonel insignia gleaming under the reception hall lights. Her smile faltered slightly when she saw me, confusion flickering across her features. General Williams, Emma said formally, I see you've met Dr. Chen. Are you discussing the psychological readiness assessment for our medical teams? General Williams looked between Emma and me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Actually, Lieutenant Colonel Mitchell, Dr. Chen and I were discussing leadership challenges in the Pacific Theater. She has some fascinating insights about command structures at major installations. Emma's brow furrowed. Something in the general's tone suggested deeper meaning, but she couldn't quite grasp it. That's interesting. Dr. Chen, have you worked with many Pacific Command installations? A few, I replied carefully, maintaining my cover. Each base presents unique challenges in terms of personnel management and operational readiness. Emma, General Williams said slowly, Dr. Chen was just telling me about her work with Hickam Air Force Base. You know, where your sister commands. Small world, isn't it? The color drained from Emma's face. For a moment, she stared at me without speaking, her medical training warring with disbelief as she processed what General Williams had just revealed. That's impossible, Emma whispered. Rachel is she's logistics. She does supply chain management or something. She can't be. Your sister commands 12,000 personnel at one of the most strategically important bases in the Pacific, General Williams said quietly. She's responsible for operations that support everything from humanitarian missions to strategic defense initiatives. She's not just logistics, Emma. She's one of the most respected base commanders in the Air Force. Emma sank into the chair across from me, her celebration forgotten. Rachel? Is that true? I pulled off the clear glasses and looked directly at my sister for the first time in 3 years. Hello, Emma. Congratulations on your promotion. Oh my God, she breathed. You're really here. But Dad said he told everyone you weren't coming because… She trailed off, the implications hitting her. Because he didn't want my wasted life overshadowing your success, I finished. His words, not mine. Emma's eyes filled with tears. He doesn't know, does he? About your rank, your position, any of it? He's never asked, I said simply. To him, I'm still the daughter who threw away medical school to play soldier. But you outrank me, Emma said, her voice barely audible. You've outranked me for years, haven't you? Rank isn't what matters here, I replied. You've built an incredible career, Emma. You're saving lives, leading medical teams, making a real difference. Dad has every right to be proud of you, while ignoring that you're doing the same thing on a scale he can't even comprehend. General Williams interjected. Emma, your sister coordinates disaster relief operations that save thousands of lives. She oversees medical evacuation routes that bring wounded soldiers home. She manages logistics that keep field hospitals supplied and operational. The difference between you two isn't in the value of your service. It's in the scope. Emma looked between the general and me, processing information that challenged everything she'd believed about our family dynamics. Why didn't you tell us? Why let Dad think you were just… Because he never wanted to hear it, I said. Every time I tried to share anything about my career, he'd change the subject, or make it clear that what I did wasn't worth discussing. It was easier to let him believe what he wanted to believe. That's not fair to you, Emma said, her voice cracking. And it's not fair to us. We should have known. I should have asked more questions, pushed harder. General Williams stood, her expression stern. Emma, I think it's time your parents learned who their daughter really is. This family gathering just became a lot more interesting. She looked at me with something approaching respect. "Colonel Mitchell, would you mind if I introduced you to your parents? I think they're about to discover they've been celebrating the wrong daughter's achievements." "Wait," I said, catching General Williams's arm before she could lead us toward my parents. "There's something else going on here. You didn't just recognize me by chance, did you?" Williams paused, her expression becoming more guarded. "What do you mean?" "You knew I'd be here," I said, pieces clicking into place. "You mentioned hearing about me in Pacific Command circles, but you also knew Emma's family background well enough to connect us immediately. That's not casual knowledge." Emma looked between us, confusion evident on her face. "What are you talking about?" I stepped closer to Williams, lowering my voice. "General, I've spent 18 years learning to read situations and people. You're not just Emma's commanding officer who happened to recognize me. You sought me out specifically. Why?" Williams sighed, glancing around the reception hall to ensure we weren't being overheard. "You're right. This isn't a coincidence. Can we step outside? There are things you both need to know." We followed her through French doors onto a quiet terrace overlooking the base parade grounds. The evening air was cool, and the distant sounds of the reception felt muffled and far away. 3 weeks ago, Williams began, I received a request from the Inspector General's office. They're conducting a quiet investigation into irregularities in medical supply contracts across multiple bases. Specifically, they're looking at unauthorized modifications to procurement procedures that have resulted in substandard medical equipment being purchased at premium prices. My stomach dropped. What does this have to do with Emma or our family? The investigation started at Ramstein Air Base in Germany, where several critical surgical procedures failed due to defective equipment. When they traced the procurement chain, they found that purchase recommendations had been altered after being submitted by medical officers. Emma's face went pale. Altered how? Specifications changed, vendor preferences modified, quality requirements reduced. Always in ways that favored specific suppliers who happened to charge higher prices for inferior products. Williams looked directly at Emma. "Emma, every base where these irregularities occurred had one thing in common. They'd recently implemented new medical protocols that you had helped develop." "That's impossible," Emma protested. "I don't have anything to do with procurement. I write medical procedures, not purchase orders." "No, but your procedures specify equipment requirements," Williams explained. "And someone with access to your recommendations has been systematically altering them before they reach procurement offices." I felt my command training kick in, analyzing the situation from a security perspective. "General, are you suggesting Emma is under investigation?" "I'm saying Emma's work is being used to justify fraudulent purchases, and we need to determine whether she's an unwitting victim or an active participant." Williams turned to Emma. "Lieutenant Colonel, I need to ask you directly. Have you ever been approached by anyone asking you to modify your equipment specifications? Anyone offering incentives for recommending particular suppliers?" "Never," Emma said firmly. "General, I write procedures based solely on medical best practices. I don't even know most of the vendors who manufacture the equipment I specify." "What about family members?" Williams asked quietly. "Anyone who might have access to your work, your computer, your draft procedures before they're submitted?" Emma's confusion deepened. "Family members? Why would—" She stopped, her expression changing. "Wait, you think Dad is involved in this?" "Your father has contracts with several medical device companies," Williams said. "Consulting agreements that pay him substantial fees for quote 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 advisory services. Some of those companies are the same ones benefiting from the altered procurement recommendations." I stared at Williams, the implications hitting me like a physical blow. "You think Dad has been using Emma's work to defraud the military?" "I think someone has been systematically exploiting Emma's reputation and expertise to justify fraudulent purchases. The question is whether that someone is acting with or without her knowledge." Emma sank into one of the terrace chairs, her face ashen. "Oh God, the laptop." "What laptop?" Williams asked sharply. Dad bought me a new laptop 6 months ago. Said he wanted to make sure I had the best equipment for my work. He insisted on setting it up himself, installing security software, organizing my files. Emma looked up at us, horror dawning in her eyes. He's had access to everything. Every procedure I've written. Every equipment specification. Every recommendation. Williams nodded grimly. Emma, I need you to understand something. If your father has been altering your work to benefit his consulting clients, you could be charged as an accessory unless we can prove you weren't involved. But she wasn't, I said fiercely. Anyone who knows Emma knows she'd never compromise patient care for money. I believe that, Williams replied, but belief isn't evidence. We need proof that Emma is innocent and proof of how her work was being manipulated. Emma looked up at me with tears in her eyes. Rachel, what am I going to do? If this gets out, my career is over. Even if I'm cleared, the scandal will destroy everything I've worked for. I knelt beside my sister's chair, taking her hands in mine. Emma, we're going to figure this out. But I need you to tell me everything about Dad's involvement in your work, every conversation, every suggestion he's made. Are you willing to help us investigate your own father? Williams asked me directly. I looked across the terrace toward the reception hall, where Dad was probably still holding court, basking in Emma's achievement while having no idea that his other daughter commanded a major installation. The irony was bitter. He dismissed my career as worthless while potentially using Emma's career for criminal purposes. General, I said, tell me what you need. Before we proceed, General Williams said, there's something else you both need to know. This investigation goes deeper than procurement fraud. We have evidence that some of the defective medical equipment has been deliberately sabotaged. Emma's head snapped up. Sabotaged? What do you mean? The surgical failures at Ramstein weren't just due to poor quality control. Lab analysis showed that critical components had been chemically weakened. Someone wanted those procedures to fail. Williams's voice was grim. We're not just talking about fraud anymore. We're talking about attempted murder of military personnel. I felt the blood drain from my face. How many casualties? 7 soldiers dead, 12 permanently disabled, all from surgical complications that should never have occurred with proper equipment. Williams pulled out her phone and showed us photos of medical devices. These components were systematically compromised before being shipped to military hospitals. Emma stared at the images, her medical training allowing her to immediately understand the implications. This level of sabotage requires intimate knowledge of surgical procedures. Someone had to know exactly which components to target for maximum damage. Someone with medical expertise, Williams agreed. Someone who understood not just what equipment was being used, but how failures would manifest during critical procedures. The pieces were falling into place with horrifying clarity. Dad didn't just alter procurement recommendations, I said slowly. He provided the technical knowledge necessary to weaponize medical equipment. Dr. Jonathan Mitchell has consulting contracts with 3 companies, Williams confirmed. TechMed Solutions, Precision Surgical Systems, and Advanced Medical Devices. All 3 companies received altered specifications from your sister's recommendations. All 3 delivered compromised equipment to military installations. Emma stood abruptly, pacing to the terrace railing. This is impossible. Dad saves lives. He's dedicated his entire career to helping people. He would never. Emma, I interrupted gently, when did Dad start showing interest in your military work? She turned back to us, her face pale. About 2 years ago, right after I published that paper on combat surgical protocols. He suddenly wanted to know everything about military medical procedures, equipment specifications, supply chain management. He said he was proud of my work and wanted to understand it better. 2 years ago was when the first compromised equipment appeared at overseas installations, Williams said. Emma, your father didn't start paying attention to your career out of pride. He was conducting research for his consulting clients. I walked over to my sister, placing a hand on her shoulder. What else did he ask about? Think carefully. Emma's eyes filled with tears as she remembered. He wanted copies of all my procedures. Said he was creating a personal archive of my achievements. He asked about which bases used which equipment, how quickly new protocols were implemented, which installations had the most critical surgical needs. He was mapping military medical vulnerabilities, Williams said flatly. Emma, your father has been using your expertise to identify the most effective ways to sabotage military medical care. But why? Emma whispered. Why would he want to hurt soldiers? What could possibly motivate him to do something so monstrous? Williams exchanged a look with me before answering. Money. Dr. Mitchell's consulting fees from these 3 companies total over $2 million per year. But there's something else. Intelligence suggests he's not working alone. She pulled out a tablet and showed us surveillance photos. These are from a restaurant in Georgetown 3 weeks ago. Your father meeting with known foreign intelligence operatives. The photos showed Dad sitting across from 2 men in expensive suits. Even in the grainy surveillance images, their body language suggested serious business discussion. Foreign intelligence? I asked. Chinese MSS, most likely. They've been systematically targeting military medical infrastructure as part of a broader campaign to degrade American military readiness. Williams swiped to another photo. This is Dr. Mitchell accepting a briefcase from one of the operatives. Emma sank back into her chair, overwhelmed. My father is a traitor. He's been using my work to help foreign agents kill American soldiers. It gets worse, Williams said quietly. Dr. Mitchell specifically requested that you be assigned to Joint Base Andrews. He told the assignment board that working closer to home would improve your performance and allow for better family support. He wanted me here so he could have easier access to my work, Emma realized. And so he could monitor and control your career advancement, I added. Emma, he's been manipulating your assignments to maximize his access to sensitive information. Williams nodded. The promotion ceremony today wasn't just about celebrating your achievements. It was about positioning you for access to classified medical protocols that your father's clients want to compromise. Emma looked at me with desperate eyes. Rachel, what have I done? How many people have died because I trusted him? You haven't done anything wrong, I said firmly. You're a victim here, just like the soldiers who died from sabotaged equipment. Williams stood, her expression resolute. But now we're going to stop him. Both of you. Emma, you're going to help us document exactly how your father gained access to your work. And Rachel, I need your expertise in base security and intelligence operations. What are you proposing? I asked. We're going to catch Dr. Mitchell in the act. Tonight. He thinks Emma's promotion gives him access to even more sensitive information. We're going to let him think he's succeeding, right up until federal agents arrest him for treason and murder. Before we could formulate a plan, the terrace door opened and Mom stepped outside, her elegant composure cracking as she saw the 3 of us huddled in serious conversation. Emma, sweetheart, your father is looking for you. He wants to introduce you to some colleagues from Walter Reed Medical. She stopped mid-sentence when she saw my face. Rachel? Is that really you? I removed the wig entirely, running my fingers through my short military cut. Hello, Mom. She stared at me for a long moment, tears forming in her eyes. You came. Even after everything your father said, you came to support Emma. Mrs. Mitchell. General Williams interjected gently. We need to speak with you privately. It's about your husband's consulting work. Mom's expression shifted from joy to wariness. What about his consulting work? Emma stood and took Mom's hands. Mom, how much do you know about Dad's contracts with medical device companies? I know they've been very lucrative, Mom replied carefully. He's been able to expand his practice, increase his charitable giving. Why? What's wrong? General Williams stepped forward. Mrs. Mitchell, your husband has been using Emma's military medical protocols to help foreign agents sabotage American military equipment. Soldiers have died because of information he provided. Mom's face went white, but she didn't collapse or deny it immediately. Instead, she closed her eyes and took a shaky breath. I was afraid this day would come. You knew? Emma asked, shocked. I suspected, Mom said quietly. Jonathan's personality changed about 2 years ago. He became secretive, paranoid. He started asking strange questions about your work, Emma, and the money. She looked at General Williams. No consulting fees are that generous without strings attached. From her purse, Mom pulled out a small digital recorder. I've been documenting conversations for 6 months. Phone calls he thought I couldn't hear. Meetings he held in his home office. General Williams took the device with reverence. "Mrs. Mitchell, what made you start recording?" "Because I recognized some of the voices," Mom said, her voice breaking. "I may not be military, but I've attended enough military functions over the years to recognize when someone has an accent that doesn't belong. When my husband started taking calls from people who spoke English with Chinese inflections, I knew something was terribly wrong." She looked at me with tears streaming down her face. "Rachel, I've followed your career through back channels. I know exactly what you've accomplished, what you command, how respected you are. When your father dismissed you, I started my own investigation into who you'd really become." "Mom," I whispered, stunned. "I have newspaper clippings, official citations, testimonials from officers who've served under you. I know about the tsunami relief operation you coordinated that saved 3,000 civilians. I know about the medical evacuation protocols you developed that reduced battlefield mortality by 15%. Her voice strengthened. "I've been so proud of you and so ashamed of how this family has treated you." Emma stared at our mother in amazement. "You've been protecting Rachel while documenting Dad's crimes?" "I've been trying to find a way to expose your father without destroying both my daughters' careers," Mom replied. "I just never imagined the solution would involve Rachel commanding one of the most important military installations in the Pacific." General Williams smiled for the first time that evening. "Mrs. Mitchell, you may have just given us everything we need to bring down this entire network." Our planning was interrupted by the sound of footsteps on the terrace. Dad appeared in the doorway, his expression shifting from mild irritation to shock as he recognized me. "Rachel!" He stared at me as if I were a ghost. "What are you doing here? And why are you—" He noticed Mom's tears, Emma's pale face, General Williams's stern expression. "What's going on?" "Dr. Mitchell," General Williams said formally, "I think you know exactly what's going on." Dad's demeanor changed instantly. The confident surgeon replaced by something more calculating. "I'm afraid I don't know what you mean, General. I'm here to celebrate my daughter's promotion." "Which daughter?" I asked quietly, stepping forward. "The one whose work you've been stealing, or the one whose career you've been dismissing for 18 years? His eyes darted between us, assessing the situation. "Rachel, I don't know what lies you've been telling these people, but—" "No lies, Dad. Just truth you've never bothered to learn." I straightened to my full height, letting my command presence show. "I'm Colonel Rachel Mitchell, commanding officer of Hickam Air Force Base. I oversee 12,000 personnel and operations across the entire Pacific Theater." Dad's face went ashen. "That's impossible. You do logistics." "I command the base that coordinates every major military medical evacuation in the Pacific," I continued. "The protocols Emma writes? They're implemented through systems I oversee. The equipment specifications you've been altering? They affect operations under my command." "Jonathan," Mom said quietly. "They know about the consulting contracts, they know about the sabotaged equipment. They know about the Chinese contacts." Dad spun toward Mom, his mask completely dropping. "Lillian, what have you done?" "What you should have done years ago," she replied. "The right thing." Dad's hand moved toward his jacket pocket, but General Williams was faster, stepping between him and the rest of us. "Dr. Mitchell, I wouldn't recommend reaching for anything right now." "You don't understand," Dad said desperately. "The people I'm working with. If I don't deliver what they want tonight, they'll kill us all. This isn't just about money anymore." Emma gasped. "Dad, what have you gotten us into?" I was supposed to get classified surgical protocols from Emma's new position. They want details about field hospital procedures, battlefield medical capabilities. His voice cracked. "If I don't have them by midnight, they'll eliminate the entire family as security risks." I felt ice in my veins. "You sold us out to foreign intelligence." "I was trying to protect this family," Dad shouted. "Do you have any idea what it's like to watch everything you've built become worthless? Medical practice declining, investments failing, retirement savings evaporating. These contracts were supposed to be temporary, just enough to get us back on solid ground." "By getting American soldiers killed," General Williams said coldly, "by providing information they were going to get anyway, Dad shot back. At least this way, our family benefited. The terrace door opened again, and two men in dark suits stepped outside. Not federal agents. I could tell by their bearing, their positioning, their eyes that constantly scanned for threats and exits. "Dr. Mitchell," one of them said with a slight accent, "we've been waiting for you to return to the reception. It's time to collect what you promised us." Dad looked at us with something approaching desperation. "Please, just give them what they want and everyone walks away alive." I looked at Emma, at Mom, at General Williams. My family's life hung in the balance, but so did national security and the lives of countless soldiers who would die if these protocols reached enemy hands. "Dad," I said quietly, "some prices are too high to pay, even for family." The men in suits stepped closer, their intentions clear. This was the moment of choice. Safety or justice, family or duty. I made my decision. "Emma," I said calmly, never taking my eyes off the two men, "step back toward the reception hall door." But instead of retreating, Emma moved closer to me. "No, Rachel, we're in this together." General Williams spoke into a small device on her collar. "Sierra team, terrace now. We have hostile contacts." The man with the accent smiled coldly. "General, your security team is currently dealing with a gas leak in the main building. Such unfortunate timing." That's when I realized the scope of their operation. This wasn't just about extracting information. They'd planned to eliminate witnesses and make it look like an accident. "Dr. Mitchell," the second man said, "the protocols. Now." Dad looked at Emma with pleading eyes. "Please, sweetheart, just give them what they want." "I don't have classified protocols on me," Emma said, her voice steadier than I expected. "Everything is on secure military networks." "Then you'll access those networks," the first man replied, producing a tablet. "Right here, right now." I stepped protectively in front of my sister. "That's not happening." "Colonel Mitchell," the man said, his accent more pronounced now. "Yes, we know exactly who you are. The base commander, who's been interfering with our supply chain operations. Your death tonight will send an interesting message to other military leaders." The reception hall doors burst open, and federal agents poured onto the terrace. But they weren't alone. Dad's foreign contacts had backup. Gunfire erupted as the two groups engaged. In the chaos, I tackled the nearest operative, using hand-to-hand combat training I'd hoped never to need outside of a war zone. Behind me, I heard Mom scream and Emma shouting medical instructions as someone went down. General Williams had her service weapon drawn, coordinating with the federal agents while maintaining protective positioning around our family. "Rachel, get your family inside." But as we moved toward the door, Dad made a desperate choice. He lunged for the tablet the operative had dropped, trying to access Emma's files himself. "Jonathan, no!" Mom cried. That's when Emma did something that surprised everyone. She grabbed the tablet from Dad's hands and smashed it against the terrace railing, destroying any chance of the classified information being accessed. "You want to know the difference between me and you, Dad?" she said, breathing hard. "I actually understand what loyalty means." The gunfire stopped. When the smoke cleared, both foreign operatives were dead, and Dad was in federal custody. The gas leak had been a false alarm. Williams's security team had been ready all along. As Dad was led away in handcuffs, he looked back at us one final time. "I was trying to protect this family." "No," I said quietly. "You were trying to protect yourself. There's a difference." General Williams approached us as the scene was secured. "Emma, are you injured?" "I'm fine," Emma replied, though she was shaking. "Is it over?" "The immediate threat is over," Williams confirmed. "But this investigation will continue for months." Dr. Mitchell's network was extensive. I looked at my sister, seeing her clearly for perhaps the first time. "Emma, what you did tonight, destroying that tablet, choosing duty over family pressure, that took real courage." "I learned from the best," she said, taking my hand. "My big sister, the base commander I never knew I had." Williams smiled. "Speaking of which, I think there are about 300 people inside who are about to learn some very interesting information about the Mitchell family." "What do you mean?" Mom asked. Well, Williams said, Colonel Mitchell's true identity is about to become very public knowledge. I think it's time everyone knew who they've really been celebrating tonight. 1 year later, I stood in the same reception hall at Joint Base Andrews, but this time I wasn't hiding in the shadows. I was the guest of honor. The ceremony was smaller than Emma's had been, just family, close colleagues, and a few senior military officials. But the significance was greater than any promotion I'd ever received. Today, I was being presented with the Distinguished Service Medal for my role in exposing the medical equipment sabotage network. Emma sat in the front row, now serving as Chief Medical Officer for Pacific Command, a position that utilized her expertise while keeping her far from any procurement decisions. She'd testified before Congress, helped develop new security protocols, and turned her traumatic experience into a force for positive change. Mom sat beside her, prouder than I'd ever seen her. She'd divorced Dad during his trial and dedicated herself to supporting military families affected by the sabotaged equipment. Her victim advocacy work had become her new calling, a way to transform guilt into healing. As for Dad, he was serving 15 years in federal prison. The full scope of his betrayal had shocked even the prosecutors. 7 years of selling medical intelligence, resulting in the deaths of 19 American service members and the injury of dozens more. The Chinese intelligence network he'd been part of was completely dismantled, but the damage he'd helped cause would last forever. After the ceremony, General Williams approached me with a familiar expression, the look of someone who had new orders to deliver. Colonel Mitchell, she said formally, then smiled. Congratulations on a well-deserved recognition. Thank you, General. Though I have to say, it feels strange being celebrated for investigating my own family. Sometimes the hardest service we perform is the kind no one wants to do, Williams replied. Speaking of which, I have news. The Pentagon is creating a new position, Director of Medical Security Operations. It's a joint position between Pacific Command and the Inspector General's office, focused on preventing the kind of infiltration your father's network achieved. I raised an eyebrow. Let me guess. They want someone with both command experience and personal understanding of how these networks operate. They want you, Rachel. The position comes with a promotion to Brigadier General. I looked across the room at Emma and Mom, deep in conversation with other attendees. For the first time in my adult life, we were building something together instead of being torn apart by Dad's expectations and manipulations. General Williams, I said, does this position involve working closely with medical officers like Emma? Extensively. You'd be developing protocols she'd help implement across all services. I smiled. Then I accept. It's time Emma and I learned how to be sisters again. Later that evening, the three of us sat in Mom's garden, sharing stories and slowly rebuilding what Dad's betrayal had nearly destroyed. Emma told me about her work developing new surgical protocols. Mom shared her plans for expanding victim services. I talked about the challenges of command and the weight of making decisions that affected thousands of lives. You know, Emma said as the sun set, I spent so many years resenting that Dad favored my career over yours. I never realized he was actually using both of us. He's gone now, Mom said quietly. We get to decide who we are without his manipulation. I reached for both their hands. Then let's decide to be a family. A real one this time. Sometimes the greatest victories aren't won on battlefields, but in the quiet moments when broken relationships finally begin to heal. Sometimes coming home means discovering that the family you need was there all along, just waiting for the truth to set them free. Machem. We were finally free. Machem machem, ever desoeris taro. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.